Joe and I are back to talk some more about what is the difference between the phases of the unit arc that I talk about, specifically the phases build the base and case study. So this has been a common question. What is the difference between what would you teach and how would you teach differently in the build the base phase versus the case studies? The rest of the things, the hook, the student project time, the present and then reflect are pretty self-evident. Teachers are pretty comfortable with that. But sometimes when we're creating curriculum, we have that question of what is this distinction and is it actually worthy of being a distinction? And I think the answer to that is you determine that. But I think after talking you through this today and showing you some examples, that it may be clear why it's so cool to divide it up in that way and what the result for students is and how that's more meaningful sometimes or different from how you might traditionally teach in just kind of a chronological order if you're a history teacher, or kind of chronological for the book, or the sequence of a lab or something if you're ELA science, all the things. Okay, here we go. An example unit arc. I don't know why it says arcs, plural, arc 1. And this is a sample unit arc that was for a program where they would meet 10 times during the course of a quarter. So this is obviously not a typical unit length, I would say, but you can lengthen it for as much as you want. The concepts still remain true. So your element or phase would go hook, build the base, case studies, student work time, present, publish, and reflect. Now you can determine how many days each of those are. And I want to specifically, because I've talked about this before in other videos, talk to you today about the purpose and the protocol options. So the purpose of the hook, while I think it is obvious what a hook is, right? Or the idea of hooking the student's engagement, often what we come up with for a hook is not that engaging. And even if it is engaging, sometimes it's not actually deepening the student's understanding in a meaningful way. So what I think is best is to always be thinking about the question, why is this valuable to students right now in this moment, but also to their local connection? So we need it to be modern and or local. So it's something that's related to the core concept you're going to teach, and that core concept needs to be defined because we're going to talk about that next and build the base. And you're going to pull it in using some sort of current event or issue that's happening in your local community. Local community could be school, neighborhood, city, town, state, even nation or globe. It could be just this is imminent and modern, and even though it's not local, it's still happening right now and it's on our students' minds. Now, once you have that, I think for the protocols there, in case you're wondering, I often love doing a discussion, sometimes paired with a video about a current event or a documentary or something that is a little bit more engaging. It could be an experiment or something if you're doing science, an observation of some kind. It could be a really compelling text, but I like to do a lot of discussion because we're going to do a lot of text later. Now, build the base has to hit on your core text or foundational knowledge. Now, if you don't know what the foundational knowledge is for the unit, I would say look again at your project or driving question. What is framing the unit? So if your project question or your driving question that I've historically called it is something I think we might do this in the next video, a great U.S. history unit question with a team I just worked on was, what's more important, safety or freedom, right? Then your core idea is probably going to be around safety and freedom, right? And so we need to define those. We need to find where they show up in, perhaps if you're teaching U.S. history, some U.S. documents, right? Throughout history, maybe the Constitution, maybe the Bill of Rights, what do these say about them, right? Those are going to be your core texts. Now, if our question is what's more important, safety or freedom, and we're teaching a U.S. history course, we are going to go back through and find a bunch of examples where someone, maybe a Supreme Court decision, made the decision for safety or freedom. Let's look at these government decisions or these court decisions. What was prioritized, safety or freedom? And how did that work out for people? And who did it work out for specifically? What groups, right? That might be how we approach a unit like that. And so the case study is going to be all of those various applications, all of those contexts. So where does that question apply? So all of the decisions that the government made, all of the decisions that the court made, or as many as you can fit in that relate to that question, right? And then the student work time is ultimately that you're going to put it together. They're going to synthesize all that they learned from all of the historical things and the core text, and they're going to apply it to a local or modern issue. So again, we have that modern local connection coming back here. So build the base is truly just what is at the absolute core of answering this question. We have to understand the concept of safety, and we have to understand the concept of freedom, and we have to understand the concept that we need to have kind of a balance of them, right? Or else, we're going to have some issues. And what that balance looks like can totally be up to the students. We're not dictating what it is, but we're saying like balance is important in some way, right? Or if you have the extremes, like tell me what that looks like. Like find me an example in history, right? And so for case studies, you can have a lot of students do their own research and bring that in. But what that typically looks like is you're looking at a text. Almost always here, build the base, you're looking at a text. And then what I like to do is discuss it. So maybe we're looking at 1 or 2 historical documents, 1 or 2 things, and then we're discussing really early on, before we get all these applications, let's talk about safety or freedom. What's more important to you? Maybe we did that on day 1, but now we're going to do it after we've read the core text. And then we're going to say like, okay, so with that frame, let's look at history. And we're going to look at all the examples with that same question in mind. And students are going to, at the end, come up with their own ideas about the question and connect to modern context. So I hope that helps distinguish. The build the base is really like, what is at the core that students absolutely need to know and understand in order to look at that concept in all of these various applications through the case study days. We're going to do a lot more around unit arcs, what they look like in practice, what those different build the base activities or case studies could be, and we're going to use a lot of different content to keep it going. Actually, we just created a new playlist, so you can feel free to check that out. It's all about unit planning specifically, and I think it's called Unit Planning in Action.